Funding for this edition of State of Affairs with Steve Adubato has been provided by Holy Name. This place is different. The Turrell Fund, supporting Reimagine Childcare. New Jersey Sharing Network. Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield of New Jersey. Here when you need us most. PSEG Foundation. Operating Engineers, Local 825. New Brunswick Development Corporation. The New Jersey Economic Development Authority. And by NJM Insurance Group, serving New Jersey's drivers, homeowners, and business owners for more than 100 years. Promotional support provided by NorthJersey.com and Local IQ, part of the USA Today network. And by Insider NJ.
Welcome to a very special edition of State of Affairs right here on News 12 Plus. We are honored to be joined by our good friend Roger León, who is the president, not the president. He's the superintendent, which is really the president of the Newark Public Schools. He's the superintendent of Newark Public Schools. Good to see you, Roger.
Hey, thank you for having us.
Real quick on this. We're about to introduce a segment here where you talk about a whole range of issues and challenges, learning loss issues, dealing with teachers, summer school, a whole range of issues as it relates to the Newark Public Schools and your students. But our initiative in cooperation with you is Stand and Deliver, Powering Equity and Social Justice. Why is that initiative so important?
Oh my goodness. The idea that we are focusing and empowering our students to be the change agents is what it's all about, that they are realizing in our classrooms that their voices are extremely important, that the problems that they have inherited from us and us from other generations are at their doorstep. Who better to really unpack the problems of society, but children that are in Newark schools today? So the idea that we are at a very young age, starting at schools that are just opening like Michelle Obama, to students that are in our high schools, helping them realize the potential that they have now is what's super critical, and addressing the issues that are actually before us, that who better to be able to help us figure out some of those problems and not wait until they actually become adults in their own very right. So we're extremely excited about the voice that we are providing students, the voice that they actually have, and just realizing that they are the change makers, in fact, to help make big things happen for not only them, but for us and the world.
You know, as you listen to the superintendent, realize that for over 20 years, we ran the Stand and Deliver Leadership and Communication Program, and we work closely with the Newark Public Schools and the superintendent. It was his idea to have those students and the other students right now in the public schools to be the spokespeople, to be the leaders, to hear their voices. So that comes from the Newark Public Schools and the superintendent, Roger León. Superintendent, I want to thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you. We appreciate you.
Right back. Hi, everyone. Steve Adubato. We kick off the program with a distinguished member of the state legislature, State Assemblywoman Nancy Muñoz is Deputy Minority Leader. That would mean, Assemblywoman, that's the Minority Leader. That's the Republican Party, right?
Correct.
Just checking.
Minority, that is the key there.
Exactly. Assemblywoman, you've been with us many times, but in addition to your work as a state legislator, particularly focused on healthcare issues, 35 years as a nurse. Fair? Is that accurate?
More than that as a nurse, but probably years working as a nurse. Yes, that's accurate. Actually, I graduated a long time ago, but I still have my nursing license.
The most significant challenge facing the nursing profession today is?
Right now, the biggest challenge, I believe, is we have a tremendous shortage of nurses. And having this tremendous shortage of nurses impacts the ability to deliver care because we simply don't have enough nurses. I think COVID had an impact on it. People who were, nearing retirement decided that it was time to retire. People were stressed out because of COVID, and young people aren't entering the profession. The other problem we have, Steve, is that we probably don't have enough slots for a professional nursing education in the state, which is an issue. I've been working for the 14 years I've been in the legislature on how we can help that issue. Do we, the community colleges are in a position to do the preliminary education of the nurses, the pre-science courses, the chemistry, the biologies, the microbiology, et cetera, and then transition into the baccalaureate program. So, we need a very coordinated and smooth transition from one to the other. And I've actually worked with several of the community colleges, i.e. Union County College, to allow them also to grant a Bachelor of Science in nursing. The courses would be the same, the qualifications would be the same, they would take the same test. So I think we need to be more flexible in our thinking on how we educate the nurses. I'm a real strong believer in a Bachelor of Science in nursing should be what everyone should strive for. And I think that we can do it if we work together.
The other issue that I think about, because we've had so many healthcare leaders on talking about this, is the pay for nurses. And that there are many who argue that these traveling nurses who are not staff nurses, they're getting paid so much more moving from hospital to hospital, hospital system to hospital system, on a day rate or based on a day rate that allows them to make more than if you were a staff nurse. So the question becomes, where's the incentive to be a staff nurse?
That's a really good point. Traveling nurse is not for everyone, obviously, because a lot of nurses, have families and they need to be able to, live near their family. And the traveling nurse program actually lets you move around the state also. And the traveling nurse program was set up initially so that we could fill in those slots where we had shortages. And then when they can overcompensate, meaning they pay much more, and I think we have to factor in, and I don't know the answer to this, all the benefits that nurses get who work within the hospital system. So, you have to add another 30% on, 33% on to your pay when you talk about benefits such as healthcare and vacation time, et cetera, et cetera. So we have to look at that. I've been a strong proponent that hospitals should offer continuing education for nurses who want to get their bachelor's degrees, loan forgiveness programs for nurses who will come to work for them, especially in those hospitals that are most in need, underserved areas such as, our urban areas where we need more nurses. Loan forgiveness programs, we do it in other professions. We do it in medicine. We do it in psychiatry. We should be doing it in nursing as well. If you commit to 5 years in a underserved area, we'll take off, whether it's whatever the X number is per year off your student loans. That would incentivize nurses to come and stay.
Real quick follow-up on this. Burnout. I think a lot about the issue of wellness, and for physicians and nurses. How hard is it to calculate, Assemblywoman, the burnout factor? Burnout is such a ridiculous word. The impact, the psychological, emotional, physical impact of COVID on nurses.
That's a really good question because it really is hard to quantify. And I think for every person is personal. I probably believe that depends on how every institution handled the issue of COVID. I have lots of friends in nursing and a lot of places set up teams. And I think that the teams work together. They brought nurses who worked on the floors and brought them to the intensive care units. And they worked in 4-member teams so that they had each other to depend on. I think that people who were broad thinking and could actually look at ways to make sure that those people who don't have a background in intensive care nursing had the backup that they needed. And I think that that's where we need to be as far as supporting us longtime, the new nurses with backup from longtime nurses to work collaboratively as a team, rather than throwing people into a system that says sink or swim. And I really feel like that backup, that teamwork is integral to healthcare delivery because, nurses and doctors and all the healthcare professionals work together. We should be looking at that and how we can better facilitate that to prevent that burnout.
Real quick point before I ask you about childcare. Assemblywoman Muñoz volunteered during COVID jumped in onto the front lines, if you will, to help out. She's not going to say that, but it was needed to be said. Nancy, let me ask you this. Childcare, our initiative, Reimagine Childcare, the graphic goes up right now, talking about the need for more affordable, accessible, quality childcare. How high a priority on your legislative agenda is this issue?
It's an issue I've definitely been working on since for many years now, and I think it is a priority if we want to get people back to work. I put in a piece of legislation with Assemblywoman Pinta Marin, who's from Newark.
The Ironbound, that's right.
It is to have child care available at the State House for those who work. How do we get more women into the legislature? Partly by allowing them to be able to get to work. So, we're looking at all of these things. How do we, if we go back to healthcare, many hospitals figure out ways to provide childcare at the facility if they have the room, which, will bring us to the topic of hospitals having the ability to, or any business, to provide access to childcare. And also, we have to be mindful that most of the childcare providers in this state are small businesses run by women. And we must do everything we can to help these small businesses, both in facilities and in ways that we tax people and ways that we present this. We want to make sure the state doesn't move it away from these small businesses, because this is really a leg up for many, many people as to start a small business and to succeed and to be part of the solution to this issue.
Next time we have the Assemblywoman with us, we're going to try to, we'll have a comprehensive conversation about the number of women who have left the state legislature and the need to have more women involved in elective office, particularly in the state legislature. Assemblywoman Nancy Muñoz, who is the deputy minority leader, that is the deputy leader of the Republican Party in the state assembly. Thank you so much, Assemblywoman. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
To watch more State of Affairs with Steve Adubato, find us online and follow us on social media.
I'm Tim Sullivan, CEO of the New Jersey Economic Development Authority. Since joining the NJEDA, I've been struck by the incredible assets and resources that New Jersey has to offer. The NJEDA is working every day to grow New Jersey's economy in a way that maximizes the values of those assets to benefit every single New Jersey resident. This includes more support for small businesses and a focus on reclaiming New Jersey's position as a leader in the innovation economy. Visit njeda.com to learn more about how NJEDA is building a stronger and fairer New Jersey economy.
We're now joined by Roger León, who is the superintendent of Newark Public Schools. Superintendent, good to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
We are actually doing this at the end of the school year, the end of June 2023. Number one lesson that you have learned in this year where unmasking has taken place and we're further away from COVID than ever. Biggest lesson that you've learned as the leader of the school system?
Oh my goodness, there are a number of important lessons that have obviously been learned. The urgency of the moment has just been reaffirmed. There's a lot of work that needs to be done to challenge our students to move the work, and that just continues to be a reality today.
Talk about learning loss. I mean, there's a lot of rhetoric around it, but what's the reality of to the degree to which students in the Newark Public Schools have lost in terms of where they should be, where they need to be grade-wise, academically? Please, Superintendent.
Yes, if we put things into perspective. So today's reality, take a senior in high school, their last normal schooling, with the exception of their return back last year, was in 8th grade. So the disruption to their freshman year, their high schooling has been unlike any other graduating class ever, not having its full complement, learning from home a good portion of almost 50% of their high school years. The national trends are happening here in Newark as well, where we see older students impacted a little less than our younger students. That English language arts is the area where growth is demonstrated far quicker than in math. So the disruption for a good year and a half to schooling has had a significant impact that we're still realizing today, even though there are signs of hope that clearly show that we're moving in the right direction.
Superintendent, beyond, and by the way, the math piece, I just want to mention this because I want to talk to you about social emotional issues as well. Standardized tests, which there's a whole range of discussion about that, debate about it as well. 6.8% of Newark students scored at grade level in math compared to 24% statewide. Explain to folks what some of the primary reasons for that would be.
Well, we first look at what are we comparing. So we're comparing scores from 2019, which is pre-pandemic. No one was even thinking about the amount of learning from home, the impact on social emotional learning needs of students, regardless of whatever school type that they were attending. And then the impact of the assessment that actually was administered last school year. So the majority of those students were not even in school, or at least 62% of our students were just returning back to school last school year. We had 38% of our students that actually returned in April of 2022. So when we do a lot of analysis, we're looking at students who have been with us during those entire 2 different time periods, students that have been with us during the entire duration of the actual pandemic. So when we do all of these comparisons, we see students who are with us the longest actually did far better than students who were just coming into our school system, meaning that the impact of the response to the pandemic did differ from school types outside of the city of Newark. So when you're comparing those 2 time periods, it's convenient to forget what actually has in fact happened, the inequities that did exist, the issues that we needed to address that were quite profound, like making sure that students had technology at home.
I was just going to say technology, which is an economic issue for many.
Well, technology is just one aspect of it because it's
Right.
actually having the hardware. But if you don't have Wi-Fi access, it doesn't matter how many computers you actually have in your household. So making
Right.
sure that students actually had that as well. And then just given the way that the city is organized, we had a number of students, over 2,500, that we issued hotspots for because not only technology, but the Wi-Fi access was just not accessible to them. So that's one aspect of it. One of the things that I think I previously shared was that there are 8 million meals that we distributed during the height of the pandemic. So food inequities that were also impacting our students. And I would also want to highlight that while many people had the luxury of working from home, many of our parents were the first responders, were essential workers, and they're the ones who actually made everyone's reality of working from home more of a reality. So we had several issues at play. And I'm not talking about any excuses. I'm just saying that to understand the magnitude of what we're addressing, you need to actually not forget any of the factors that actually got us to where we are right now.
Got a couple of things. I'm going to ask about teachers in summer school in a second, but I also want to disclose that the Newark Public Schools, in collaboration with Newark Public Schools, we're doing a series, Powering Equity and Social Justice, part of a Stand and Deliver series. Superintendent, summer school, is it mandatory for certain students in Newark right now?
Absolutely. So we have a cohort of students at the elementary level where summer school is mandatory. We're going to intensify during the months of July and August, accentuate some of the work that we were doing during the course of this year, and really focus on literacy and mathematics skills for the next 2 months.
Got it.
That's just one aspect of it. I didn't want everyone to think that our summer program, so we call it summer programs. There are
Got it.
basically 3 components to it: the intensified mandatory program for elementary students, the accelerated programming that we're affording students that are in our high schools, and then just a lot of fun activities, whether it's during the day or way into the evening, opportunities that we've increased for students of all grades.
Got it. Superintendent, to what degree is there a significant teacher shortage in the public schools in Newark?
Well, the national teacher shortage is real. One of the realities that impacted us in Newark was the creation of new positions, because there are 2 trends that are occurring nationally that we're experiencing its impacts, but not as profoundly: the teacher shortage and enrollment. Our enrollment has increased incredibly. way close to about 40,000 students over the course of the last 8 years or so, with about 35,000 being our lowest in around 2013, 14. So our enrollment is going up, which means we had to create new positions. So over the course of the summer, our creative strategies, as well as our what we call the NTU reopener, were essential towards addressing the 700 teachers that we needed to hire, and did so over the course of the summer, this past summer. So we've had about 60 or so vacancies that we've carried for the year.
A daunting responsibility. That's the superintendent of the Newark Public Schools, Roger León. Superintendent, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having us. I appreciate you.
You got it. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
To watch more State of Affairs with Steve Adubato, find us online and follow us on social media.
We're now joined by Robert Torricelli, former United States Senator in the great state of New Jersey. Bob, good to see you.
Nice to see you, Steve.
You are still engaged, involved, and care deeply about representative democracy. Our series, Democracy at a Crossroads, the graphic will come up. You are advocating, together with the former governor, Christine Todd Whitman, a third party. Seriously? Could it work? A, and B, why is it so necessary?
Well, having given my entire life to the Democratic Party, it is a little bit of a man bites dog story. You know, Steve, I think a lot about my 20 years in the Congress and the years before that in the White House, and what I saw and what I learned of the current state of affairs. And it's led me to a few strongly held beliefs. One, that despite the rancor in American politics, the debate is awfully stale. There are ideas expressed, but very few new ideas, very few new points of opinion, and no new interests. It's the same interests with the same arguments back and forth. And one way that you deal with that is, if it may be a third party, if not a third party, fusion voting. And
what does that mean?
Well, there are times, believe it or not, against all evidence, that the Republicans can have the best candidate. It can happen. And I would like to be able to vote for that person without voting for a Republican, as there are people who would vote for a good Democratic candidate without necessarily voting for the party. The best example of this in our lifetime, of course, is John Lindsay. We had both parties in New York City stale. New York City was in crisis. Most New Yorkers were not going to vote for a Republican for mayor.
Which Lindsay was, but he was also, was he a part of the Liberal Party?
He's a Liberal Party. So New York is a good guide on this. And it's one of the reasons why I think New York politics has been more vibrant, sometimes more ideological, and easier for new forces to break in. Now, it's worked both ways. John Lindsay became mayor of New York because the Democratic Party had gotten stale, really should have lost the election. But as I say, people weren't going to vote for a Republican. The opposite happened when Buckley became U.S. Senator for New York on the conservative line. The party was changing. The Reagan Revolution was starting. So a lot of Republicans did not want to vote for the Rockefeller Republican Party in New York. They were conservative. They're part of the new Reagan Revolution, and they voted for Buckley. All I'm suggesting in this is that mixing this up more, getting more points of view involved, I think is healthy for everybody.
But Bob, you understand politics better than virtually anyone I know. To what degree would the Democratic and Republican Party and those who are in elective positions from those two parties be in favor of that? How would that even happen?
Well, it kind of depends where you are in the party. For example, where I now live, Hunterdon County, my Bergen roots now behind me, in the big race last year between Tom Kean and Malinowski, you simply couldn't get enough independents in Hunterdon County to vote for Malinowski. They would not pull a Democratic left. So I think a lot of liberal Democrats argued at the time, and were right, had they had the chance to vote for Malinowski on a liberal line or a different line, independent line, he would have won. It would have mixed it up more. So I think you will get elements of each party that will do this. You certainly will with Republicans, because there are many Republicans who are more for conservative doctrine than they are for the Republican Party as an institution. Many more. So
or for Donald Trump and the MAGA movement.
And now you've got that. You've got many principled Republicans who simply will not vote for Donald Trump, but would like to vote on a conservative line. I don't, in a democracy, I think by and large, options help. and in getting more people and more points of view.
Bob, I've heard Governor Whitman say this, and I think you're in the same place on this. First of all, is there a name of the party?
Well, the people are different parties. I mean, they're already as a workers' party in New Jersey, a People's Workers' Party. There has been an independent party. Some have formed. I'm not part of that. I am and will always be a Democrat. But I think you would see if this were to open up that you could run on multiple lines, you undoubtedly would say the Workers' Party, you'd see a liberal and a conservative party.
But if if a third party candidate ran for president, and people who are ideologically where you are on most issues were then to realize that that third party candidate, if that third party candidate was more ideologically aligned with you and some other folks who believe some of the things you do, those votes would say they came from the Democrat, Joe Biden, and Donald Trump, if he's a Republican nominee, were elected.
But if you have fusion voting,
go ahead.
I could vote for the Liberal Party in New Jersey, which can be committed to the same electors or the same candidate as the Democratic Party. The best example of this would be the Republican Party. If somebody wants to vote Republican but doesn't want to vote for Donald Trump, they could vote for someone else who is claiming both lines. It's the John Lindsay case all over again. I can vote for a liberal. I don't have to vote for a Republican, but I want John Lindsay.
Do you see this happening, Bob, before the next presidential election?
No, but I think we do get there, which kind of leads me to, I said there were two things I've been thinking about. Right. One is related, but different. You should do this because you were in public office too. A lot of people sit back and think—
one term in the legislature doesn't even count, but go ahead.
Yeah. So a lot of people sit back and think about all the good things they did. Okay? I spend more time thinking about the mistakes I made. What were my bad votes? And I've noticed something about every bad vote I cast. Contrary to public belief, it's where there was consensus, not opposition. People think the principal problem in American politics today is that no one can get along, there's no bipartisanship. Well, that is a problem. Make no mistake about it, it's a problem. But so is stampeding, where both parties align. Think about in our lifetime the worst policies of the United States government. Vietnam, initially bipartisan. Far and away, the second Gulf War was a bipartisan disaster. The Patriot Act, and I could go through 6 or 7 of these that I was a part of. I'd give my eye teeth to get those votes back. But at the time, it was everybody. And when I talk about a fusion voting and getting 2 other parties, you could be a Democrat, but you would know you had another line to run on if you went against the leadership on one of these votes.
Mm-hmm. Bob Torricelli, giving us an awful lot to think about and staying engaged and involved, making a difference. Former Senator, United States Senator Bob Torricelli. Bob, thank you so much for joining us. We'll make sure we continue the conversation. All the best. I'm Steve Adubato. That is Bob Torricelli. We'll see you next time.
State of Affairs with Steve Adubato is a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation. Funding has been provided by Holy Name, the Turrell Fund, supporting Reimagine Childcare, New Jersey Sharing Network, Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield of New Jersey, PSEG Foundation, Operating Engineers, Local 825, New Brunswick Development Corporation, the New Jersey Economic Development Authority, NJM Insurance Group, and by these public-spirited organizations, individuals, and associations committed to informing New Jersey citizens about the important issues facing the Garden State, and by Employers Association of New Jersey. Promotional support provided by NorthJersey.com and Local IQ, and by Insider NJ. To watch more State of Affairs with Steve Adubato, find us online and follow us on social media.
I'm Tim Sullivan, CEO of the New Jersey Economic Development Authority. Since joining the NJEDA, I've been struck by the incredible assets and resources that New Jersey has to offer. The NJEDA is working every day to grow New Jersey's economy in a way that maximizes the values of those assets to benefit every single New Jersey resident. This includes more support for small businesses and a focus on reclaiming New Jersey's position as a leader in the innovation economy. Visit njeda.com to learn more about how NJEDA is building a stronger and fairer New Jersey economy.